The audience goes nuts when Eala totally destroys Coco Gauff in just 58 minutes. Nobody expected it. Not the commentators, not the supporters, not Gauff herself. Compared to the first serve, the energy was different. Sharper, colder, and electric. Eala was not just playing tennis but also delivering a message. Every shot cut through the air like a blade, and every response was met with fire. As her beat faltered, Gauff's self-assurance steadily decreased. The crowd grew with every rally, and their disbelief turned into a yell. And when the final ball crossed the finish line, quiet gave way to chaos. The past had just changed. But beneath that 58-minute masterpiece lies an unexpected story of pressure, rivalry, and clandestine revenge. Because sometimes the purpose of domination is not to acquire power but to disprove everyone. Before the eruption, there was silence. There was a strange, eerie silence in the arena just before the game began. A seemingly cautionary silence. Everyone knew Coco Gauff, the youthful genius who conquered the world and carried the weight of expectations with ease. A Grand Slam victor, a symbol of the future of the sport. On the other side of the internet was Eala, a composed individual who is underappreciated by many and unknown to others. She did not garner media attention. She was not the most well-liked. But she was the unexpected storm. For months, Eala had been working on something in secret. She endured long practices in the scorching sun, watched match videos late at night, and conquered periods of uncertainty. In the Philippines, where she was born, tennis is more of a passion than a promise. Every success feels like a revolt, and every setback feels personal. From the beginning, Eala was told that players from her part of the world don't fare well. Too few resources, too far away, too small a stage. She didn't want to overtake them and refute them, though. She desired it because she felt like she belonged there. Now, amid the bright lights of this court, she stood opposite the woman who stood for everything she had been told she couldn't be. On the court, Coco Gauff is a fierce competitor, the public favorite, the face of modern tennis, and the sweetheart of endorsements. The game was not supposed to be close. There were one-sided betting lines. Commentators projected a straightforward victory. But as Eala went to the baseline for her warm-up, there was a subtle kind of anger in her eyes. She wasn't there to participate. She was there to take charge. In the corner, her coach whispered something that only she could hear. Of her group. Disregard who she is. Remember who you are. It was not merely advice. The cause was ignition. The spectators grumbled restlessly as they waited for Gauff's characteristic zeal to light up the court. The cameras flickered. Reporters took notes. However, Eala's first serve cracked like thunder because it was quick, clean, and exactly on the edge. Even Gauff seemed a bit surprised. Nobody was prepared to accept the narrative that was unveiled in the initial game. Gauff's cadence was not getting through to Eala. She dictated it. Every rally was measured, and every move was planned. And within minutes, the tension began to ease. The crowd, used to celebrating Gauff's dominance, started to notice something odd. Uncertainty. The look in Eala's eyes was familiar to seasoned admirers. Not nervousness, not arrogance, simply such pure focus that it was almost frigid. Within that focus was the story of all the time she had been ignored and all the competitions she had entered under a false identity. It was not only a match. It was a declaration. When the first set began, the audience was still holding out hope for a comeback. They all always did with Gauff. Her perseverance was her legend. But with every point, there was a murmur in the air that became louder. Who is this girl? By the time Eala shots broke serve for the first time, she had become a proclamation. Every winner caused gasps, and every rally ended in shock. She was not smiling or celebrating. She was focused, attentive, and focused. Suddenly, the fierce and fiery Coco Gauff looked human. Furthermore, within the first half hour, the balance of women's tennis appeared to be shifting. Before the storm began to break, there was silence. The eruption was approaching. Initially, there was only one rally. 41 shots of defiance. This kind of rally, the kind that alters what you think is real, is what defines momentum. The serve had just been lost by Coco Gauff. She stood at the baseline and spun her racket, trying to slow down the fading rhythm. From across the internet, Eala was gazing at her. There was only that constant, unflinching heat. No smile, no feeling. Gauff's characteristic power was evident in the strong first serve, which was a blur in the distance. Eala caught it flawlessly, deep to the backhand. The cross-court, forehand, backhand, and back-and-forth lines came next. Neither was pulling back. The spectators gasped as the tempo quickened with each shot following each exchange. Then it happened. Eala saw the angle coming, moved in, and smacked a forehand down the line with such ferocity that it painted the edge of the baseline. The umpire's call broke the tension. Eala, have fun. In the air, something broke. Gauff froze as the crowd roared. That moment changed everything. Not simply a game's result. For the first time during the game, Coco seemed unsure. Her eyes darted to her box for solace. Her teacher applauded slowly, but it was obvious from his manner. This was not supposed to happen. While everything was going on, Eala simply walked up to her chair and took a sip of water, her expression unreadable. Commentators tried to explain it. Maybe Gauff is adjusting, one person remarked. Another whispered that Eala was acting irrationally. But they had no idea that this was not a lucky run. It was a strategy. Eala had studied the game of golf. She knew where the pressure points were. She wasn't always a winner. She made mistakes and tightened the angles till Gauff had little space to breathe. The audience, who were mostly there for Gauff, became irate. There were gasps, whispers, and even nervous applause when Eala's winners struck clean. The first set's mood was drastically changed by a brief exchange at 4-1. After missing a typical backhand and slamming the ball on the net post, Gauff shouted in frustration. The umpire issued a warning, and the arena became silent. Without answering, Eala just turned away, fixed her wristband, and walked to the baseline. That moment showed the world who was in command because it was now psychology rather than just skill. All of Gauff's facial expressions added to Eala's calm. The more Coco tried to energize herself, the colder Alex seemed. The difference was striking. While one player is seeking rhythm, the other is managing time. The games that followed went by quickly. Eala's reprisals were precise, brutal, and almost surgical. In court, she moved with ease. When she broke for 5-1, the audience was stunned. People started recording what seemed to be history in real time on their phones. Is this really happening? In the front row, a fan shouted. By the time the opening set ended 6-1, the narrative had drastically changed. Commentators were using phrases like dominant, thunderous energy more frequently. She knew that the match was still ongoing, yet she never once grinned. Gauff didn't try to reset until the very end of the second set. Deep breaths, a slower pace, and a couple excellent serves. But momentum is a strange thing. Once it shifts, it's hard to get it back. And in Eala's eyes, the spark had already turned into fire. By the fourth game, Gauff's irritation flared up again. Eala questioned a line choice, her forehand brushing the edge. Get out. Gauff shouted. The umpire declined. The crowd's jeers created a tense atmosphere. Eala simply nodded and prepared to serve again. At that moment, the illusion was completely destroyed. It wasn't a coincidence. This was absolute, methodical, unstoppable dominance. When Eala held service with an ace down the tee, the crowd shouted again, half in shock and half in gratitude. Since Coco Gauff was not the young woman from Manila's opponent at that very moment, she was changing the story in real time, one game at a time, one comment at a time. All the questions she had ever faced were in competition with her. And for the first time, it seemed like she was winning. At the start of the second half, the atmosphere in the arena had completely changed. What had begun as a goth-friendly group had transformed into something completely different, unpredictable, and thrilling. The sound of disbelief echoed after every point. The collective thought was almost audible. This isn't feasible. Eala was ahead by a set and had already broken serve once more. Her confidence had developed into control, which was now dangerous. It was dominance that was suppressed. Every movement felt purposeful, and every rally ended on time. Without pumping her fist, shouting, or rejoicing, she turned, adjusted her cap, and walked back to the baseline. The peace and serenity caused the audience to erupt even louder. After a remarkable victory at 2-0, Coco Gauff finally let out a shout. She waved her hands toward the stands, hoping to profit from the disturbance. The audience responded with applause, chants, and enthusiasm. For a moment, it appeared as though the tide would turn, but Eala didn't blink. After dragging Gauff off the court and serving wide on the subsequent point, she finished with a sharp forehand into the open space. The rally lasted for 9 seconds. There was a gasp from the audience. The chorus, Eala, then emerged from one section of the upper seats. At first, all was silent. "Hi there, Eala." It became clear that she was no longer alone in the stands as the crowd grew boisterous. The decline with every lost point. Every time Eala tried to rally, her response was sharper, faster, and colder. Social media began to buzz during the game. Videos of Eala's brilliant forehands and Gauff's botched backhands flooded X and TikTok. "Who is this girl?" We read one tweet. "One more. Eala is behaving as if she needs to prove something, and she is succeeding in doing so." By the middle of the second set, Eala's golf was starting to gain popularity. During the entire performance, shocked the pundits whispered, "We haven't seen a better performance versus Coco Gauff in a long time." The concern was no longer confined to the court, it had expanded throughout the entire world. At 4-1, Gauff made 2 mistakes. The crowd groaned as she threw back her head, obviously annoyed. Eala bounced the ball 3 times before serving again, calm as ever. "One more ace, please." Cameras caught people's reactions as they cheered and gawked as the crowd exploded. With their hands folded, Eala's crew watched her every move while remaining mute in the player box. They knew what was going to happen before the final game. To keep the game rolling, Coco Gauff is serving. The audience rose, calling out her name and begging for a miracle. But miracles don't happen when you ask for them. Eala returned in a vicious manner. Deep, heavy, and unrelenting. By fighting, Coco made a mistake. Point of the game. Silent. The serve landed